Welcome to our Gotan-e Fujimatsuri service. This is our commemoration of the birth of Shinran Shonin, the founder of our Jodo Shinshu school of Buddhism. So it's partly his birth. He was born on May 21st, 1173, according to the solar calendar, on the outskirts of Kyoto, Japan. But it's also connected with one of his experiences as a young boy, age 9, where we don't know the exact circumstances, but he went to be ordained as a monk in the Tendai school for Mount Hiei. So at age 9, they take him to a temple to be ordained, but it was late in the afternoon. So the head priest suggested that they wait until the next day. But Shinran is said to have spontaneously uttered the following poem. Asuari to omou kokoro no adazakura, yoa ni arashi no fukanu mono kawa. We may think, I will look at the cherry blossoms tomorrow, but a storm may arise in the night. Amazed by the deep insight into impermanence of young Shinran, the head priest relented and he was tonsured immediately. He ended up studying for 20 years on Mount Hiei, only to find himself incapable of perfecting the difficult path of sages. So he turned to Honen Shonin, from whom he learned of the easy path of the Pure Land, Amida Buddha, and the Nembutsu, which he then went on to teach to people of all walks of life. So for our service, we'd like to continue with the sutra chanting. We're doing this to express our praise of Shinran and Amida Buddha, also our gratitude. So we're going to recite Shoshinge, which is a text written by Shinran, the Gatha of Nembutsu and entrusting. This text is really important, and it's Shinran's encapsulation of Jodo Shinshu. So if you already know it, you just chant along. The best way to do it is chant along. The words will be on the screen. Even if you haven't heard it, the melody's easy once you get it. So you can try chanting along, or you can just kind of mouth the words. But I was also able to get the English translation on. It's kind of small at the bottom, but you could also read the translation as you listen, or you can just listen to the music. It's a electronic music version that I did a few years ago, based on the Ongaku Hoyo that Nishihon Ganji put out, this kind of musical version of Shoshinge. So I hope that you like the musical aspect of it. We'll also recite Nembutsu in a slightly different way that we've done here a long time ago. It's melodic, and instead of saying Naman Dabu, we're going to say Namo Amida, Namo Amida Butsu. So reciting the Nembutsu, and I managed to get the words and the melody on the bottom of the screen for that section too. And then it'll just be regular echo. So let's now have the chanting of Shoshinge.
Shoshinge 称号意の水波無明暗腸内心臓死運無上不真実新人天非尿日光不運無運無資源妙無暗逆心謙虚大狂気即応超絶合悪種一切全幕本部人門神如来偶税願仏言広大小下者善人妙分なり家弥陀仏本願念仏邪見教魔なく主張信行十字人に難難中死難昔インド祭天子論下中華自治義士構想現代諸公正所意妙如来本税要記釈迦如来両河線異種五妙難天竺龍樹大事出頭世質の財波無権先絶大乗無情報召喚議事小安楽賢治南行六六信行異行指導楽億年弥陀仏本願次年即時入筆上唯の上昇如来語法法大悲偶税四天神菩薩増論説奇妙無下光如来永主たら見真実当選王朝大誓願こういう本願力栄光移動群上昇維新非入空独大崩壊筆逆入大へ収集特使年下造世界即昇信用法精進有本能人間人図入生自音自用下本師どんなん両天使上高蘭消防殺来三蔵ルシ十上教本上宣教気楽法天神菩薩論中下報道因果見世願方言猫ゆたり少女死因唯新人惑前本部新人没承知生じ即涅槃一死無量光明道小雨衆上回復家当社結晶道難所唯妙浄土活入万全自力変言中円満特語感染症三部三神慶音言総末法滅道非因一生増悪地偶税死安如外小妙化先導独妙無所意公愛上三妙逆悪公妙妙語慶輪年介入本願大智慧行者小樹金剛心狂気一年相互用意大東逆三人即小法小四上楽原神公開一大教延期安養管理祭先祖出身反先人法家二道小弁流極重悪人唯小物が薬剤非摂取中煩悩証言随不見大非無見上昇が本資元空妙仏教連民全幕本部人新宗教商公編集戦弱本願偶悪性現内生じ人連下決地義上一生死即入弱上無意楽一心人二の入 具兄弟自主士と城塞無変極辱悪同族自主愚道心有意過心し
Next, we will recite the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma, now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves your supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in your life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Next, we will have representative incense offering representing the Buddhist Church of Oakland, Ashland Hoakai, and Concord Hoakai, Reverend Michael Shojun Endo.
Namandabs, 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 namandabs.
Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Chenxing Han is a Bay Area-based writer whose publications have appeared in Buddha Dharma, Journal of Global Buddhism, Lion's Roar, Pacific World, Tricycle, and elsewhere. She holds a BA from Stanford University and an MA in Buddhist Studies from Graduate Theological Union. She did study chaplaincy at Institute of Buddhist Studies. And she has also written this book, Be the Refuge, Raising the Voices of Asian American Buddhists. And we had a wonderful seminar about it yesterday. Yesterday, she was in conversation with Funi Su, one of our members and a professor here in the Bay Area, and also with some of our junior YBA members. And then we recorded her and myself in conversation for today's talk. So let's open our ears and open our hearts to listen to the Dharma. Okay, we're here with Chenxing Han, and yesterday we had a really wonderful seminar. It was just fantastic. It was Chenxing in conversation with Funi Stu, one of our members and a professor at a college locally, and also some of our junior YBA members from here in Oakland. And it was just a really wonderful gathering, and we're really happy to have you here today also as our guest speaker for our Gotan-e service, celebrating the birth of Shinran Shonin, our founder. But you have this book recently, Be the Refuge, Asian American Voices, Asian American Buddhist Voices, right? And it's a really, it's being received really well, I think, and it's a really special book. And so I was thinking kind of in terms of Buddhist Church of Oakland, right? That Buddhist Church of Oakland has been here over 100 years. It's like 120 years, I think, this year. And it's one of the oldest BCA temples. And it's history, right? But it's alive too, right? It's living history, right? It's that period of time, and yet it's what we're doing now too. And so I think it's a really wonderful space to have done the seminar yesterday and to have you as a speaker here today. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's just such an honor to be here. I think the last time I was at BCO in person was a few years ago, and it was actually for a friend of mine. His uncle had a memorial service there, and it was just really moving to see all of the support that he was receiving, and his family was receiving. And it was just a reminder of how many generations of exactly that history that you're talking about and how it's supported. So for, what more than 100 years, it's really remarkable to think about.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate to be here, and I feel like kind of like a caretaker, I guess, is one way, or protector almost, right, of this legacy. And yeah, just this bell is incredible. The bell that you heard during the sutra chanting is dated 1940.
Wow.
And so that's before Pearl Harbor, and so the bell was donated before Pearl Harbor. They must have used it for services, and then had to lock it away during the internment, right?
Wow.
But survived. The bell is here. This bell that I ring is, it's so powerful to think, wow, this bell like revived that, as did the community, right? As did Buddhism. It was difficult, right? They had to go through really difficult times, but that's part of the fabric, right, of this temple and this community.
Absolutely. And I often think about how, in a small way, like all of us are kind of caretakers of the Dharma. It's sort of like the Dharma takes care of us, but we also take care of the Dharma, even in the really tiny things we do. Think about how many people have either rung that bell or just polished that bell or just protected it, made sure that it was kept safe, that it hasn't been broken or dirtied over all of these years.
Mm-hmm. And something that was said yesterday that jumped out at me was taking care of others, right? You were talking, helping other people, and as part of being Buddhist in a way sometimes, right? The bodhisattva ideal. In Jodo Shinshu, we don't talk so much about like me being a bodhisattva, and yet that idea of taking care of others, helping others, and how that was kind of your experience of the memorial service, right? Was that the community comes, and these people are suffering this deep, difficult loss, and so we come to try and help in however we can, right? And that's part of community, part of Sangha, right? And that's such an important part of Buddhism that maybe is part of what is kind of rejected in that dominant view of, oh, that's superstition. That's what Asian Buddhists do. That's not real Buddhism. That's not authentic Buddhism. But it's like, what are you talking about? This is Buddhism in a way, right? And it allows all of us to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think about the triple gem and how Sangha is so essential, right? And I think when I hear statements like, oh, they're just like over there, like working their mala beads, or they're just, shucking peas or something, or chatting about their children. And I'm thinking, but how do you think Sangha is built? Sangha is built one chant at a time, one sort of round of the mala at a time. It's about one meal at a time, all the people who make our meals, and then we eat them together and we come together in community that way. Like that's how Sangha is built. Sangha is built one inquiry about someone's kid or their mom or their pet dog at a time, right? That's how we form these bonds of spiritual friendship. That's how we get to know each other and become like family. It's sort of like we become Buddhist family members. We may not be literal blood family members, but we develop this feeling of kinship for each other. And to me, Buddhism really invites us into that. And the Shin Buddhist communities in America that I've been to have all, I think, just embodied that so beautifully. I've always felt so warmly welcome, even though I'm not Japanese American, even though I wasn't raised in the Shin Buddhist tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to call our services family Dharma service because there's such a family element, but and I've been talking about this recently, but I changed it to Dharma family service. So it's family is important, but not only the bonds of blood or marriage family, but also the Dharma family, right? That even if we don't have those bonds, we can still be part of this bigger family. But I also like that. Is it spiritual friendship that you talk about? That's fantastic too, right? And Shinran says, fellow travelers on the path. Right, that we're walking the path as equals together, right? And so these images of Sangha, right, I think are really wonderful and powerful aspects of BCA temples, Jodo Shinshu, and Buddhism in general. Because I have a feeling, I don't really know, but I have a feeling similar things happen at other communities of other sects from other countries, all here in America, right? So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I really love that phrase, fellow travelers on the path. I think that part of the impetus for wanting to write this book was I actually felt kind of lonely especially as an Asian American Buddhist, because I just, didn't feel like there were a lot of, especially when the mainstream Buddhist representation can be so predominantly white, and then really also wanting to hear more from young voices in particular. And sort of the process of interviewing so many people and just being in conversation with them, really, I felt like I discovered that actually there are so many fellow travelers on the path, and there's so much I can learn from them. And so really writing the book was a huge gift for me, actually, that whole process. And I felt like I was able to what's the word? I mean, just realize we're not alone. We're never alone, even in times like this that can feel so isolating, but that the Dharma family is actually very vast, and there's so many, bonds that can be built, that can be created, and also that can be strengthened and deepened over time.
No, I think your book is a treasure for many people, and it's going to be looked on in that way, I think, in times to come too. Just really, it's hard to be aware of the times you're living in, and I think maybe that's something about the pandemic that allows us to kind of see it in a way, right? That we realize, no, these are weird times, but there are positive things happening too, right? That as much as there's difficult things, that was talked about yesterday during the seminar too, right? Creating the narrative, right? That we don't have to just react to negative things happening. We create this positive narrative and story coming out of our own real experiences,
Yeah, I really love how the junior YBA members, sort of their advice for even young Buddhists who might feel kind of like, young Shin Buddhists, for example, who might feel sort of reluctant to say they're Buddhist, or because they're afraid of the types of stereotypes they'll receive. But I just love them how they said, like, well, stereotypes are limiting. And so, don't let yourself be boxed in by the stereotypes. I mean, believe what you believe and just really root into that, gather strength from it. I thought that was really, really inspiring to me, because I think about, for those who've been going to temple for so long, just week after week, how much they know. It's incredible. It's like kind of just in their memories. It's in their bodies, almost like they know how to do Oshoka. They know what it sounds like to be surrounded by chant. They know so much. And that's them, yeah, again, like going back to caretaking Buddhism. But I think that is living Buddhism, and you can't reduce that to a stereotype. And I really see these junior YBA members understanding that. And also really, I was inspired by them saying, when I've seen sometimes Buddhism is taught in a kind of reductionist way in my schools, I'd want to invite my teachers to maybe be able to feature Shin Buddhism in more of its complexity or fullness, to show that we are actually parts of all segments of society, and that our Buddhism doesn't match a stereotype that all Buddhists are, always meditating and only meditating, or only like monk figures, or only vegetarians, or always calm and never angry. So I actually think that they just have such an incredible vantage point on Buddhism, one that challenges the mainstream depictions, and that to see the way that they can already understand the value of that is really inspiring.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to be able to interact with some of our junior YBA members. And speaking of stereotypes, that's one of the problems we're having now. There are so many stereotypes out there, right, of all kinds of people and things and everything. But that's one of my favorite things about Shinran, is that, to me, he breaks a lot of the stereotypes. If we look at Shinran, if we hold, he was a monk who got married. That's the big one. It's just like, if you think Jodo Shinshu is about being a good person, that wasn't Shinran. He broke one of the cardinal rules, right? That just following the rules, keep your head down, don't rock the boat. The nail that stands up gets hammered down, follow the rules. That's not Shinran, right? That's not how Shinran lived his life. And that he actually openly married, had a family, protested the emperor's treatment of the Nembutsu movement. Right. And so that's really one of my favorite things about Shinran. I wanted to share. So here's the picture I told you about. And it was in the opening kind of montage during the Kansho. But I think often the picture we get of Shinran usually is he looks like a monk. He's old, he's elderly, right? His head is shaved. He's got long eyebrows, maybe these arched eyebrows, and he looks kind of like we expect. But this is a picture from the 20th century by a Japanese artist.
Wow.
Young Shinran, like maybe 30, 31, or maybe actually closer to 40. It doesn't look like what you expect Shinran to look like, right? It's by an illustrator, Japanese illustrator. I think he wrote it maybe right after World War II. And it's maybe Shinran during his exile, right? And that he's been exiled. He was a monk. He's been disrobed. His hair's grown out. He's got facial hair, and he's young. Right. And so I really love this picture. When I found this picture, it blew me away, because, just like, this is not what you think of when you think of Shinran, but that was part of his life, right? That he had these parts of his life that we don't know about, or that we don't normally picture. But then also you were saying about you heard someone talking about Shinran as humble, right? As this kind of image of Shinran as one of the most humble people. But in Shinran's own words, in Kyogyo Shinsho, he says, I'm lost in the mountains of fame. I'm so arrogant. I think I'm so learned and I know the meaning of this Chinese character or that Chinese character. But then these illiterate peasants come in. They can't even read a character, but they get it. And I'm filled with shame and remorse. And, like, he's got this deep insight into himself, but he's not humble. He says so himself. Like, who else can you trust if not himself, right? So that's another aspect of Shinran that I like, of this kind of like crushing stereotypes, and Jodo Shinshu Buddhists too, as, we're not all monks. It's a Buddhism of equality. And we're not monks. We grow your hair, eat meat. We don't follow any precepts as ministers. So that's one thing I like about Jodo Shinshu, and maybe it's the part of its power that we haven't learned to harness yet, maybe in the bigger media kind of view or something like that. But yeah. So it was great to hear the junior Y members also kind of recognizing these stereotypes out there, and that we don't have to feel boxed in by them.
Right. Actually, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of them said, I used to feel like I needed to be a certain way to even fit into a model minority stereotype, or to be Asian or something, and then realized, like, no, I don't have to. Like, I think there's that spirit of almost the kind of refusal. I think there's a real power in that kind of resistance. And that part of my book, the first part of my book, which is titled Trailblazers, is about these Shin Buddhists. And I see it, we can trace it all the way back to Shinran, but this kind of like trailblazing energy, which is not at all a unique energy. It's something that is very much in the world and responding to the times. And I see young people now continuing to do this. My book is more focused on millennials, but I look at Gen Z and all of what they're facing, and they're thinking about complex issues of the climate collapse and racial justice and all of this. And I see them confronting that in a way that also really draws on Buddhism, draws on what they've learned, and draws on their Sangha, draws on their faith.
Yeah, and it's heartening because, like, especially to hear it from the junior Y kids and think, did I have any part of that? But more importantly, did Shinran have part of that? Did Jodo Shinshu have part of that? Like, that they understand that because of Shinshu, is exciting, right? It's like, because usually as a minister, I'm just like, I don't know if people hear anything I say. I don't know if I have any impact, but maybe I do, but not that it has to be me, right? But if they get something from Shinshu and from Buddhism, that's what I want. I'm a convert. I wasn't brought up Buddhist, and discovering Buddhism was just one of the best things that happened to me in my life. And it helped me so much. And that's what I want for everyone. But it's different, I think, when you grow up in it, right? And so it's harder for me to understand that perspective, I think. But so it's heartening to hear, oh no, they're engaging with it, right? I think that's been one of the best things for me personally.
Yeah, and I'm a convert as well. I didn't grow up in Buddhism, but I think from talking to so many people who did grow up in Buddhism, and then I think it's sometimes through just, I think, talking across these lines of difference. Like if I didn't grow up in Buddhism, to talk to people who did grow up in Buddhism, I can so see like the value in that and the beauty in that, really. And then it's sort of vice versa. They may have things they took for granted. They realize like, oh, actually, yeah, this is just woven into every aspect of my life. It informs how I am in the world and how I relate to other people. And I may not be always consciously aware of that every single moment, but that you can't really imagine my life without it. And so I think there is this deep kind of shared sense of gratitude that we all feel.
One thing I wanted to just kind of highlight a little bit is I feel like the May We Gather event on May 4th that you were part of with Funi and Duncan Newkin Williams Sensei was just incredible. And I think a lot of our members did see it, and the coverage was great. I thought the New York Times article was so cool, like all the pictures, and how it kind of like scrolled down and everything. And they had great views that we didn't necessarily get during the service itself, the pictures and everything. But you used the term ancestors a lot in that, I felt. And that's a term we don't use so much in BCA, I think. And I think it might be a kind of a Shinshu bias against practices of other Japanese Buddhist schools with the ihai, those kind of wooden tablets that are put in the Butsudan maybe even. And we're not supposed to do that. And so I wonder if in English they didn't use the term ancestors so much. But in the opening, the Kansho part, and I do a walk-in and offer incense at the main altar, but then I also offer incense in the columbarium, the Nokotsudo here. And part of me was thinking, maybe I should have put that at the end, but I'm glad I put it at the beginning because we're acknowledging them too, right? And I think that is part of Shinshu. We don't worship our ancestors, but an awareness of our past, an awareness of their struggles, an awareness that they're part of why we're able to be here today. They're part of who I am, who each of us is, right? And so I'm starting to have a deeper appreciation, I think, of ancestor, right? So I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that term and what you've found, during the book and everything.
Yeah, it's funny how certain terms might, trigger different reactions in people, or this term ancestor worship has even been used in a sort of denigrating way. I think one thing to think about is just sort of elders, right? And elders who some have passed, well, some fortunately are still with us today. But I think that kind of respect and gratitude for elders is actually something that I started appreciating more when I went to the Institute of Buddhist Studies and started encountering Jodoshin more, because I think if one's entry into Buddhism is more through a kind of individualistic meditation or about like calming oneself or feeling better, that's not actually connected to a sense of both family, but also like ancestry, we could say, or lineage, or a kind of our elders. And so, I, like I said, I'm not a Japanese American, but I feel indebted just as an American Buddhist to the Shin Buddhists who came before, many generations before. I mean, what a gift to us that these temples have endured so in spite of the odds, the temples, the churches, the Betsuin, right? I would think how impoverished American Buddhism would actually be without these. And so, yeah, I also think like of another word, practice, right? That may not often be used in Shin Buddhism. And even just a reminder that not everyone agrees on these terms is, I think, really important conversations to bring up for Buddhists so that we remember, I think we stay rooted in our religious and our cultural traditions, and we learn to respect these differences. We don't just say, oh, we need to mash them all together into one sort of form of Buddhism to rule everyone or something. We actually respect these differences. But I also see that common ground again in that just deep gratitude and respect for what we've sort of inherited, I think. And also, I think we were talking a little bit earlier about there's this quote by Lisa Lowe, who's an Asian American scholar whom I admire. And she talks about like our traditions being partly inherited and partly modified and partly invented. And that speaks to me as American Buddhist, because I think there are elements we inherit and that we think about tradition, and those are really important to respect. And also, though, partly we start modifying things because we have to in this new context of the US, right? Or I even think like what is eaten at a Shin Buddhist church here is probably different than what is the food you'll see at, a Shin Buddhist temple in Japan, for example. And then I also think this idea of partly invented. We did that for the May 4th gathering, for example. We had this kintsugi lotus that people gilded, and we kind of created a ritual by weaving together different traditions. And so there's that energy too, which I think relates to what we were talking about earlier of history being alive and living, right? And we are ourselves making history right now, just it's hard to see it, I suppose. And I guess time will tell how the people of the future will look back on us as their elders, or maybe even their ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to share one more picture related to Shinran, and it's in our hallway, and it was in the opening. So this is the calligraphy for Kenshin, which is a name that was given to Shinran posthumously in the, I think, late 19th century, maybe early 20th century by the emperor of Japan. And the names were given to a lot of the famous figures. And Ken is to see, Shin is the truth. So that name was given to Shinran in that he saw truth in a way, in maybe a new way, or a way that he passed down to others. And I just feel like that's partly what your book has done too, has enabled us to see more of the truth, more of a more of the way things really are, right? Not the dominant view where it feels like there's been a lot of misrepresentation of Asian American Buddhists, of Asian Buddhism, right? And so I really, really appreciate your book and the work that you've done. I want to thank you so much for being our speaker, especially for yesterday. The seminar was great. That was just, I could go on and on and on. I think we all could go on. Just it was so exciting to interact with our young Buddhists in that way, but then also for speaking with us on this really special occasion of Shinran Shonin's birth.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. And I think just to respond, I hope people continue to really share their own stories and listen to other stories, because I think that's how we do get to see more of the truth, right? I love the image of the bamboo in Jodo Shinshu. And Puni's once was saying to me, she sometimes says, oh, please, we're all bamboo at the times when we get a little too arrogant, right? But it's like together, actually, we get to see a slightly bigger piece of the picture. And then that's the ways that we can help alleviate suffering together, collectively, in a sort of labor of community, as a phrase Funi used yesterday. And I thought that was just really beautiful, this labor of community.
Okay, well, thank you so much. we'll conclude our talk. Maybe we can conclude with Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Butsu.
Namo Amida
Namo
Butsu.
Butsu.
Namo
Namo
Amida Butsu. Next, for our Gatha, we will have an encore presentation of Buddha Loves You from the Buddha Loves You bunch.
Fly, fly, little bird. Buddha loves you, little bird. Tweet, 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 tweet. Run, run, little pup. Buddha loves you, little pup. Bow, bow, wow, 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 wow. Don't cry, pussycat. Buddha loves you, pussycat. Mew, 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 mew. Swim, swim, little fish. Buddha loves you, little fish.
Now we'd like to have announcements, and so I'd like to turn it over to Hondo Lobley.
Thank you, Sensei. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Just a few announcements to go through today. So the following events can be found on the BCA website. The 2021 BCA Youth Retreat event dates have been announced. July 12th to the 16th is the BYR, the BCA Youth Retreat. On Saturday, November 6th is the BYR and Friends Reunion event. Also, the Eastern Buddhist League Expressions of Gratitude Conference dates have been announced. They are on May 29th and 30th. They will be live streamed via Zoom and YouTube. They're all-day events. You can register at the Ikoji Buddhist Temple website, but also all this information can be found on the BCA website. Also, some BCO events coming up. On Sunday, May 23rd, we will have our Dharma family service. But keep in mind that Memorial Day weekend, there will be no Dharma family service. The cemetery visits video will be planned for May 28th. Also on Sunday, June 6th, we will have our Dharma family service as well as a June Shotsuki. And also there's a fundraising event going on Saturday, May 22nd. It is the Panda Express BCA Endowment Foundation fundraiser. 28% of sales, online sales, will go toward the BCA Endowment Foundation. So it's one day only, and all orders must be placed online. More information about this can be found on the BCO website, so I encourage you all to go take a look. And that's it for me today. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and look forward to talking to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Hondo. This will conclude our Gotan-e Fujimatsuri service celebrating the birth of our founder, Shinran Shonin. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, please check our website, buddhistchurchofoakland.org, for upcoming events. We have a couple more services and before the end of the Dharma School year at the very beginning of June. And so we hope to see you online soon. Thank you. Take care.